Chosen ones, you are now God's favorite child, and heaven is treating you differently. Alara jolted awake, drenched in sweat, heart pounding as if echoing a warning only she could hear. Her eyes darted to her hand and froze. Etched into the center of her palm was a glowing, intricate symbol pulsing with soft golden light. It wasn't ink. It wasn't a burn. And no matter how hard she scrubbed, soap, alcohol, even scalding water, it remained. Untouched, unfading, as if alive. Panic gave way to obsession. She scoured the internet for answers and stumbled upon a hidden forum buried deep in the digital abyss. Hundreds, maybe thousands, of others had posted the same thing. A symbol just like hers, glowing on their skin, appearing overnight. Most were afraid. Some were in hiding. All of them had one thing in common. They had started hearing things, seeing things. The word chosen haunted them all. It appeared in the condensation of her bathroom mirror, perfectly written as if traced by an invisible hand. It shimmered in the clouds above her during an afternoon storm, too deliberate to be random. And at night, just as sleep tried to take her, she'd hear it. Whispered, echoed, sometimes tender, sometimes urgent. Chosen. But when she tried to show others, there was nothing. The word vanished from the glass. The whispers stopped. To the rest of the world, she seemed fine, normal. But Alara knew she wasn't. Something had marked her, and it had only just begun. It began with silence, an unnatural stillness that fell over the city like a hell breath. The birds stopped mid-flight. The hum of traffic faded. Even the wind seemed to retreat, as if the world itself was bracing for something it couldn't explain. Then the sky split. Right above Alara's city, a jagged tear opened through the clouds, wide, fiery, and impossibly bright. For 10 breathtaking seconds, time itself felt suspended. A colossal scroll, ablaze with divine light, slowly unfurled across the heavens. Its edges shimmered like molten gold, and inscribed on its surface was a script that shimmered and danced. Unreadable to most, yet aching with power. People screamed, pointed, panicked. Some dropped their phones. Others dropped to their knees in tears, trembling. News cameras caught the anomaly, but their footage would later glitch, distort, or vanish entirely. Scientists scrambled for explanations. They found none. But Alara, and those like her, understood. As the golden script pulsed, they felt something stir deep inside them. An ancient recognition, as if their souls were being called by name. The message wasn't spoken aloud, yet it echoed with absolute clarity in their minds. You have been seen. It wasn't just a declaration. It was a reckoning. Alara clutched her glowing palm as the scroll flared once more, then folded into itself and vanished, leaving only scorched clouds and a terrified silence in its wake. The world was left shaken. Social media exploded. Theories spiraled. Governments issued warnings. But the chosen knew the truth. This was the first sign, and it would not be the last. The signs hadn't stopped. They'd only grown stronger. Whispers in Alara's dreams turned into visions, and visions into moments that felt like waking prophecy. But nothing prepared her for the test. It was a quiet afternoon by the riverbank, too quiet. Families scattered about, enjoying the sun, but Alara felt uneasy. A strange pull gripped her chest, dragging her gaze toward the water. That's when she saw him, a small boy, no older than 6, flailing silently beneath the surface. No one else seemed to notice. His limbs thrashed weakly, then vanished beneath the rippling current. Her heart seized. She didn't know how to swim. She never had. But something deeper, older, moved her feet forward. Without thinking, without hesitating, Alara ran and leapt into the water. And the world froze. The splash never came. The river stilled mid-motion, droplets suspended in the air like glimmering pearls. All sound vanished. She was suspended between seconds, between breath and purpose. From the silver light above, a radiant figure descended, glowing with warmth yet impossible to look at directly. No wings, no face, just presence. It stood over the frozen water like it belonged to a higher realm. Its voice echoed not through ears, but through soul. Faith is your power now. In that instant, Alara understood. The glowing mark on her palm flared brightly, and a warmth surged through her body, pure, unwavering, alive. The moment snapped back into motion. She hit the water, not with panic, but with clarity. Her arms moved instinctively, guided not by skill, but by belief. She reached the boy, pulled him to the surface, and swam, until both collapsed safely on the riverbank. The crowd erupted in shouts and cheers. They called her brave, but only Alara knew the truth. She hadn't saved him because she was strong. She had saved him because she believed. At first, Alara thought it was coincidence. A former bully from high school, one who had tormented her for years, was suddenly hospitalized with a rare, undiagnosed condition. A corrupt supervisor at work, who once threatened to expose her for refusing unethical orders, abruptly resigned and left the country. Her name was never mentioned again. But it wasn't until she received the call about him, the man who had murdered her mother when Alara was just a child, that the truth became undeniable. He was dead. No illness. No accident. Just gone. Found lifeless in his prison cell with no marks. No known cause. The file was sealed within hours. The timing was impossible to ignore. And that night, just past midnight, as Alara lay staring at the ceiling with the glowing mark on her palm, faintly pulsing like a heartbeat, she heard again, not a voice, but a knowing that slid between thought and breath. Judgment follows the chosen. The word struck deeper than any thunder. Not with comfort, but with weight. It wasn't vengeance. It wasn't justice she had asked for. And yet, the universe was moving in ways that bent around her presence. Clearing paths. Silencing threats. And it terrified her. Was this what divine favor meant? That those who hurt her would simply disappear? That her enemies would fall, whether she wanted them to or not? The power felt less like a blessing and more like a blade. One she didn't know how to wield, but that cut all the same. Alara began sleeping with the lights on, afraid not of the darkness, but of what walked with her through it. It happened just after dusk, in the middle of a quiet field where wildflowers swayed and no one ever wandered after sunset. The sky had turned violet, the stars beginning to blink awake. Alara stood there, drawn by a tug she couldn't name, a pull in her chest that felt like gravity turned inward. Then the air shimmered. Not a sound. No thunder, no wind. Just a sudden stillness, as if the world held its breath again. Before her, reality peeled back. A radiant portal bloomed open like the eye of the universe itself. Circular, rippling like a pond of molten light, its edges laced with gold and faint celestial runes. It hovered just above the grass, completely silent, impossibly beautiful. To others nearby, there was nothing. But to the chosen, scattered across the world in different places at the same moment, they saw. Each one of them was called. Alara stepped forward, her hand trembling as the mark on her palm glowed brighter than ever. A voice, neither male nor female, rose in her mind, steady and calm. Enter and become. And she did. The moment she passed through, her body dissolved into stardust, her fear falling away like old skin. She awoke standing in the in-between, a vast, ethereal expanse where the ground pulsed with light and the sky stretched endlessly above, filled with constellations she'd never seen before. Floating structures shaped like forgotten temples hovered midair. Rivers of memory ran beside towering gates. Other chosen appeared around her, blinking in awe, their palms aglow like hers. This was no dream. It was a realm between earth and heaven, where souls were refined, tested, and made ready for what was to come. And Alara knew she had just crossed the threshold of something eternal. It didn't take long for the world to turn. At first, the unmarked watched with fear, confusion, even curiosity, whispers about the glowing palms, the visions, the miraculous signs. But awe twisted into suspicion, and suspicion into rage. News outlets began labeling the chosen as altered, unstable, and eventually infected. Scientists couldn't explain their biology. Governments couldn't control their movements. Religious leaders argued over whether they were saints or blasphemers. The public needed someone to blame, and the chosen were visible. Alera's face appeared briefly on a leaked surveillance feed, helping a girl levitate moments before a collapsing bridge crushed the street. Within hours, armed patrols surrounded the city. Drones scanned for divine signatures. Neighbors whispered. Families fractured. People Alera once loved looked at her like she was a threat. Then came the forsaken, ordinary people, embittered by what they hadn't received. Some had once begged to be chosen, fasted, prayed, waited for a sign. When none came, desperation curdled into hate. Some turned violent, convinced that if they could kill a chosen or take their mark by force, heaven might reconsider. Attacks surged across the globe. Chosen were dragged into alleys. Their marks were burned, carved, torn at. But it never worked. Instead, those who tried only spiraled deeper into darkness. Their eyes glazed. Their voices trembled. Whatever light they once had, it dimmed into shadow. Now, Alera and others were on the run, hiding in sanctuaries, abandoned churches, and beneath cities. Communication was limited. They shared visions when they could. They trained when safe. But they knew what was coming. This wasn't just a miracle anymore. It was a war between the marked and the forgotten, between the divinely called and those who would tear heaven down to feel chosen themselves. That night, Alera didn't just dream, she ascended. Sleep took her gently at first, like falling into warm water. But then the dream sharpened, vivid and vast. She stood barefoot atop a sea of stars, the universe unfolding around her in impossible colors. Galaxies spun slowly beneath her feet. Constellations breathed like living things. Time bent. Sound faded. And then he spoke. The voice didn't come from one direction. It came from all things at once. Thunder rolled beneath each syllable. Stars pulsed with every word. Mountains trembled in distant echoes, and yet the voice was tender, too, like a father calling his child home. Alera. She dropped to her knees, not out of fear but awe. Her mark glowed like a sunburst now, light streaming from her palms into the starry void. You are no longer human. You are heaven's edge. The words weren't just heard. They became part of her, written into her bones, carved into her spirit. Her body began to change, weightless, radiant, more essence than flesh. She felt ancient and newborn at the same time. No hunger, no fear, just overwhelming purpose. She saw visions, flashes of herself leading others through fire, standing before storms and parting them, lifting the dying with a touch. She wasn't just chosen now. She was weapon and witness, a blade of divine will meant to cut through darkness. As the dream faded, Alera wept. Not because she was afraid, but because she understood now. She hadn't been called to be safe. She had been called to become wrath wrapped in mercy, a living edge between heaven and earth. And the world had no idea what was coming. It happened on a gray afternoon in the city square, under clouds that hadn't moved in hours. Alera had been walking quietly through the crowd, hood up, trying to disappear into the noise. She never expected a moment like this, not so soon. The blind man was seated alone near the fountain, cardboard sign at his feet. Worn without sight. Anything helps. God bless. He wasn't begging, just existing. But when Alera's eyes met his face, something within her stirred. Her mark burned beneath her glove. The whisper came, not from outside, but within her soul, as if heaven itself leaned forward and breathed through her. She knelt before him, hesitated, and she touched his eyelids. A pulse of warmth surged from her fingers, golden and soft, like sunlight through leaves. The man gasped. His body jerked back, and then, slowly, trembling, he opened his eyes. Blue. The first thing he saw was Alera's face. My God, he whispered, tears already falling. I can see. For a breathless second, the world went still. Then chaos exploded. People screamed. Some dropped to their knees, weeping and chanting her name. Others backed away, crossing themselves, calling her a witch, a deceiver, an omen. Phones were raised. Cameras clicked. Live streams began. Within minutes, her face flooded social media. Miracle in Midtown. Angel or threat? Is she human? Alara stood frozen as authorities arrived, trying to push through the crowd. Some worshipped her. Others cursed her. But no one ignored her now. In the eyes of the world, she had become something more than human, and something far more dangerous. It was no longer a secret war. The veil between heaven and earth, once invisible, once sacred, had thinned like worn parchment. And now it tore wide and raw. Across continents, the sky ruptured in unnatural seams of fire and ash. Cities awoke to crimson storms and thunder that groaned. Like the roar of giants, oceans stirred in rebellion, the moon itself flickering like a warning eye. And beneath it all, the chosen began waking, not by alarm, but by a deep, vibrating call that thudded in their bones. Battle cries echoed in languages lost to history. Symbols blazed on mirrors, in tree bark, on newborn skin. Shadows moved across walls without bodies to cast them. Entire forests bowed under invisible pressure. The world was no longer merely mortal. And then they came, the fallen, once radiant, once holy, now shattered echoes of what they had been, wreathed in black flame and thick with rot. Their bodies were cloaked in celestial armor split by rage and regret. Their wings were tattered banners of war, stretched and broken by their own rebellion. Their eyes burned with the hatred of beings who once saw the face of God, then turned from it. They descended like curses. The chosen were their prey, but not the only ones. The forsaken, those humans left unmarked, unchosen, had grown restless, envious, hungry for divine purpose. Some began to turn willingly, whispering oaths in dead tongues, carving the sigils of fallen lords into their skin. They believed they could steal favor, seize the divine spark for themselves. But Alara had seen what the fallen did to them. They didn't grant favor. They consumed it. This was not a war for territory. It was a war for souls. And in the heart of the storm stood Alara. She had long since cast off the last remnants of the girl she once was. She now bore armor woven of celestial thread, her eyes glowing faintly with starlight. Around her marched the seers, elite among the chosen. Visionaries whose dreams charted prophecy, whose eyes could see across dimensions, into past lives and future ruins. Their mission was sacred, urgent, and perilous, to protect the last known divine relic, a living shard of the original heavenly scroll that had once cracked the sky wide open and marked the first of the chosen. The relic pulsed with living light, so pure it burned shadows from the air around it, so ancient it spoke in thunder even when silent. Alara looked to the skies, now split with ribbons of gold and soft streaks of dawn. Rain began to fall, not water, but shimmering droplets of light, like heaven itself was weeping in awe of her. Each drop kissed the earth and bloomed small white flowers. Her palm, still marked with the original symbol, began to glow once more. She reached out and touched the final scroll. The moment her skin met its surface, her back arched, and from her shoulders burst two immense wings, woven of starlight, fire, and memory. They unfurled skyward, casting divine light in all directions, silencing even the wind. And in that stillness, she chose. Not power, not rest, but legacy. Alara turned from the scroll and faced the world below, now rising with a new generation. Young chosen awakening to their purpose, their eyes filled with awe and uncertainty. They will need a guide, she whispered, voice no longer fully human. So she stayed, wings folded behind her like a promise. The skies wept golden rain, and the world would remember her, not just as a warrior, but as the one who could have risen, and instead chose to lead.